Have you ever thought, I should write a book? Or had someone say to you, you need to write a book? Writing a book can be a powerful way to promote your business, but sometimes it just seems like such a big thing. How do you actually do it? Well, that's why I am so excited with today's guest because she's going to be sharing 5 ways that you can get that story out of your heart and onto the page where it belongs. Hi, my name's June Morrow, and I help emerging coaches and transformational consultants step out of isolation and into more authentic connections with messaging that inspires them and their ideal audiences. And if this is you and you're struggling with finding clients, I encourage you to download my free training below, How to Find Clients When Social Media Isn't Doing It For You. All right, so of course, we're always talking about different ways that you can promote your business, different ways you can market what you do and reflect your own expertise in your own authentic voice. And so this is why today I am so thrilled to have this amazing woman with me. Her name is Rusti Lehay. She's a published author. She's got years and years and years of being a teacher, teaching people how to write. She's a writing coach. She's an empathic editor. I love the way you say that, empathic editor. And she has workshops and events all the time for writers who are interested in, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and a memoir or fantasy or poetry or songwriting, you name it. So Rusti, happy to have you here. And tell me how can writing a book, because we're going to focus on writing books today, how can writing a book help you as an entrepreneur, specifically as a new coach, a spiritual entrepreneur, someone who's kind of just coming out of the gate and learning how to get their name out there?
Oh, in a number of ways, June. Thank you for having me here today. I love talking about how writing can help us in so many ways. First of all, when we start writing just those little tidbits and things for ourselves, we think we might have a book. It's like there's ways that we find out and learn more about ourselves. And that helps our authenticity. When we're sitting in front of a client and we can define their problem better than they can, they're going to trust us. So I think it builds our self-esteem and it builds that authenticity that we need to be wholly and totally who we are for that person that we want to serve, because it's about serving in the long run. But when you have that finished book in your hands and you can offer it to somebody, it's like a business card on steroids. Who throws away a book? Confess, have you thrown away business cards? I have.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Throwing away a book is a different, yeah.
Throwing away a book, that's a stretch. That's I'll give one away. And I love the little free libraries, because then it's like, if I'm done with a book and nobody else in my family wants it, I can put a little free library and it can still travel. So, and also people will put books in Ziploc bags and geocache them. Your book could go around the world. And it's also a great thing to sell at the back of the room when you have a chance to speak at an event. Or one of the people that was in one of the books that I edited, she had a great time and a really successful time selling her books at workshops that she gave. So there's so many ways a book can benefit you.
Nice, nice. I think too, there's also something, because I know I used to be a dating coach for people who don't know me. And when I was a dating coach, I wrote a book, Love Lessons from a Lap Dancer. You can get it on Amazon, shameless plug. But something writing that book did for me too is it really solidified my expertise. Like, you realize how much you know when you go to write, it just kind of like pours out of you like, wow, there's a lot.
Exactly. And June, like, you were an expert in that area. And if people are still having a hard time thinking, well, I'm not an expert, if they're really struggling with imposter syndrome, here's a way to do it: is you go out and interview 9 of your heroes on your field of what you really are passionate about doing. Interview them, write a chapter on each one of those experts. And by the time you've interviewed those 9 and written about your conversations with them, about what you took away from your conversations with them, what it meant to you, and the changes it made in your life, the 10th chapter is all you become the expert, and there's your book.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I absolutely love that. And you know what? That's also brilliant marketing, because when you put your book out, it's got, like, with interviews with XYZ, like all these people, and then
Mhm.
they'll promote it to their audiences as well. Like that is
Uh,
a
That's another little,
fantastic idea.
oh, and it's another little sneaky way actually too, that what I help with some of my how-to authors is that if they have an audience that is similar but different to some experts, I say, here's this form that you can give these people and say, hey, my editor has advised that I add an extra chapter in the end of my book on resources. Your target clients are the same as mine, but we serve them differently. Are you interested in being in that resource chapter? When they say yes, then you hand them a little thing that is, $50 for this much, and it's $100 for this much space. And, and you can get some of your costs paid before your book even goes to print.
Amazing. That is
Mm,
such a good idea. Okay, I want to, before we get into tools to help you write your book, because that's what we're going to focus on today, five tools you can use, or five things that'll help you write your book and get her done, because it often feels so overwhelming. I just want to talk briefly about fear of telling your story, because I know that you help people with their memoirs, and sharing your story and why you do what you do and what inspired you in your own journey can be such a
mm,
powerful way to connect with other people's hearts, right? And yet
yeah.
sometimes we are so afraid, like it's the most terrifying thing ever. Like in my book, I talked about when I was a stripper, which is kind of really, and I talk about a lot of really personal, relationship things and sex. And it wasn't easy to kind of think like, do I want to share these things? And yet it's
Mm.
kind of like, it's that journey of being visible. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, for people who are like, oh, I want to talk about this, but I'm afraid.
Mm.
How do you kind of help people with that?
Well, there's something that I took a workshop a long time ago called Inventing the Truth. And it's there, it's important for us to tell the truth because readers are greedy and are intuitive and will know when we're holding things back. So, how do we tell the truth about those uncomfortable things, about those things that could put other people at risk? I mean, Mariah Carey wrote her memoir and her sister is suing her. How do
Yeah.
we avoid those kinds of things? How do we avoid embarrassment for ourselves and other people? Is that we can still find a graceful way to tell the truth. And part of the answer is an accountability. Sometimes the answer is in a pen name. So let's go back to accountability for a moment. With accountability, we realize for a lot of us, when we get to that place, and I call it a magical place, that's hard won to get there. Because I was addicted to anger porn for far too long until I realized I was the common denominator in all the situations that I was angry about. I had pointed myself into the victim corner and stayed there far too long. But when I realized I was an equal participant in those interchanges, I could write with grace and forgiveness and acceptance and accountability of my part in all of those scenarios. There's a lot of people that say, and is it Tony Robbins that says it a lot, Wayne Dyer maybe, that life happens for you, not to you.
Hmm.
So writing the truth can be tricky. So there's several ways. One of those ways is to say that, wow, I can see why this happened then, and I bear no ill will against this person because they were part of my path. And if we can look at the hindsight window. Eric Edmeades is a great talker on YouTube, a speaker, and he has a hindsight window TED Talk that's fabulous. And how he describes it is that when you have something that's negative in your life, the quicker you can see the positive that comes from it, to look in the hindsight window and connect all those random dots everywhere to why that happened, the less time you'll be angry or sad or lonely or misunderstood. I spent too many years not looking in the hindsight window. Then
Hmm.
one day in my class, I'd been teaching for years, and I was able to name book titles and author names, and I was able to say, Vern, remember that story you wrote about the mice in the church, and that one would really follow well with this one here. And I'd be able to say to Helen, oh, that part that you wrote about how you love rosemary, you love sticking it in your bra, but you hate eating it. Like funny, that goes along your funny stories. And some of these they'd written maybe 2 or 3, even 5 years ago, because I'd been teaching the same group, some new ones, for 10 years. And they said, how do you remember all this stuff? Do you really want to know? A few of them are getting suspicious because they know that sometimes I'm quite mischievous. to put it mildly. And a few like nodded their heads tentatively. Do you really want to know? Because it's not exactly pretty, but it's something I turned into a gift. And so then they're curious and they say, okay, when I was being molested as a child in my bedroom in the dark, I practiced memorization games to take myself out of my body and into my head.
Wow.
So now when I work with authors and they have got a story here on this page and it's, the top part of maybe in the first 10 pages or something, and then they've got another part later on, the 200s or something, and I'm saying, you told this story before. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did, because I have this kind of eidetic memory. It's not totally, but tell me, how did you just cook that dish? Or how did you get from here to there? And if I've looked at a map and if I've looked at a recipe, within a day or two, I can tell it to you word for word because I just remember it. So in that moment, when I'm empathically and collaboratively working with authors, I've got their whole story held in here. And I said, but that's not a problem because we can change this part here to just foreshadow it a bit, just tell a little bit of it. And this part here, then we can expand, or we can choose which part does it fit better, and which part do we take out, or to flex them and see where it serves the story best. But to tell those difficult things, and if we can then share the good that's come out of something that is usually termed as bad, that can help telling some of those uncomfortable things. Then also there are times when you might not want to put somebody at risk, or you might not want to destroy someone because they've learned their lessons along with you and they've come to a better place. Then you can use composite characters, and you can, and also if there's some people that are not in your life anymore, but you just don't want to risk slander, because that is a risk when you're telling truth. Is that you make somebody bald if they're vain about their hair, or you change
give them a different profession
about somebody so that they do not want to identify themselves in your story. They know it's them, but there's no way they would admit to that, because, oh my goodness, like, can we say like a word like penis in here? Nobody wants to admit that they have a small crooked penis. So,
right.
And inventing the truth. And that's where then some of the disclaimers that I offer some of my memoir writers, saying this one might really suit you. I have about 6 or 7 of them in a template where then just make it to fit. Like, all of these stories are true with the exception of, to protect the names of the innocent or something. And so does that help answer the question?
That is great. That is great. And that's super helpful. I mean, I did that in my book. Like the characters were composites. I didn't like the guys, unless they were guys who I interviewed for like their story specifically. All the guys that I talked about that I were with had different names, and some of the details have been changed, to protect things like small penis.
Yes.
And then the other thing too you mentioned is you can use a pseudonym, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I did that with my book as well, because I was working a corporate job at the time and I just didn't want, I was working for the government and I didn't want that. I wasn't sure what my future was going to be. So yeah. Great. That's so interesting. I'm gonna have to reach out to you again. This is all so interesting. Okay, so let's talk about getting your book done, or getting the writing done, because for many people that is the hardest thing. Like, they've got the story in their head and they're like, and people have said, yeah, you should write about this, and they're like, yeah, I should write about it, and then maybe they they sit down, they write a page, and then their inner critic goes, no one wants to read this, or that's horrible, and then they put it away. So let's talk about how you help people. Like, what are some tools that they can use?
Okay. Oh, tools. Jazz me up here a bit. Tools. Well, to get started, when you're told that you have a book in your head, stop talking about it to other people, because then the energy will build in you. So that's an inner tool that you may need to develop, in that it will be hard to keep it tamped down in here and not talk about it out here. But once you talk about it out here, you're diffusing the energy that will help you write it. So that's one that's kind of tied with my second tool or whatever. Do you have a question?
So tell me more about that, because I've heard the opposite. I've heard, like, if you tell people you're going to do something, you're going to be more accountable to it.
Okay, well, you can have an accountable person and you can tell them
Right.
that I'm going to write 2,500 words a day. I don't
Okay.
advise that for just starting because that's a big challenge.
What?
And what we need to do is we need to make a promise to ourselves that we can keep. And that's built into my habit creation program that I offer to people like, how do I write? Where do I find time to write? And a habit creation program builds up your confidence muscles in that you can get the book written
Mhm.
by just starting with 5 minutes a day and finding that time, that if evening time is your time because you just can't get up in the morning. I confess I'm a morning person,
Mhm.
an intolerable morning person to people that are not.
Yeah, I
And
hear you.
and so find your time of day. It might be evening when, your partner is, watching the TV or reading a book and the kids are in bed, or, your work is done for the day and you still have some energy for that. So how to start that habit is to put your journal, your pen, or a note for yourself, if you want to write on the keyboard, on your pillow if you're nighttime, so that you then, oh, you see it, oh, right, okay, all I have to do is 5 minutes. And even if no word comes out, all I have to do is 5 minutes, 5 minutes on the timer, and I'm sitting here. And I promise you, your brain is going to think of something, especially if you already know you want to write something. Now, if morning is your time, I find that easier because nobody calls me in the morning before 7. Don't tell people I get up at 7 because then they
Right.
must be calling. But I don't tell people how early I get up because then that's my time. And I write. And Peter DeVries says, I write when I'm inspired, and I see to it I'm inspired every morning at 9:30. Now, Dorothea Brand wrote a book, Becoming a Writer, in 1937. Her language is a bit old and you kind of have to parse through that, but it's one of my favorite books on writing because she says anyone can be a writer if you put in the time and the practice. But I also love what she says about banishing that inner critic, because you asked about that. What do we do with that inner critic? Well, we put it in the other room and we write something and we don't look at it for 5 days. If that inner critic is really strong, don't look for 5 days
Mhm.
because you almost always come back 5 days later. The inner critic isn't watching over your shoulder, has kind of forgotten that he goes on to the next fear or whatever. And you read it then and you, whoo, I wrote that.
Yeah.
Almost always, almost always.
Yeah.
So give it a break, give it a rest.
I love
But
that. Like, I can't tell you how much time I wasted just perfecting my first chapter, right before I
oh,
even wrote the next chapter. And it was so the wrong way to do it. But and then I realized, oh no, actually just spit it all out, go back. And like you said, you'll be like, oh, that's a good turn of phrase, or maybe I'll change this, but you got to get
mhm.
it done. Yeah. Okay. So the first tool, let's recap. What was the first tool?
The first tool was finding that time and that habit that you can create, that
Right.
is yours, that you can be steady and you can continue showing up.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed at what you can do in 5 minutes, because often when you start and you get those 5 minutes, you say, oh, another five, another five, another five. I mean, that's how
Right.
I got myself through university, because I could put off the big studying for so long, but I say, okay, just 5 minutes. And once you're
Yeah.
in it, your brain will take care of the rest of it and you'll just go. So that find that habit, that find that time that you can be steady and true to your habit.
Yeah. Great. Okay. And then so what's the second thing?
Okay, the second thing is, let's go back a little bit to what you were saying earlier about, talk to people or whatever. The second tool is to find or create or train a friendly reader, because we are not that person. You've all just heard June say how she was like, I would call you a recovering perfectionist because you've learned how to just spit it out,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely recovering perfectionist. Yeah.
Find, train, create that friendly reader. That person is going to listen. And what I mean by training them is you ask them some specific things. And remember this for later when your book is done and you're asking for pre-readers to, give you some feedback on that, is you ask specific questions. And this way, then you're going to get the feedback that is going to boost you, is going to keep you motivated, and it's going to also subtly let you know what parts aren't working without it being critical.
Hmm.
Because as a new writer, or a scared or a timid writer, you're really fragile. So honor that. So these are the two things you ask for. You ask a reader to tell you, or a listener if you're reading it out loud, because you'll hear things you want to change when you read out loud. is you ask the listener to tell you, what did you want to hear more about? Because that tells you what parts you've left in your mind, what parts you haven't put on the page. Because the reader always knows when there's something missing between the lines. They always know.
Yeah.
Because, and we're not there standing over their shoulder when the book's done. Well, don't you get it? This is what I meant. No, we're not there. So asking them to tell you what they want to know more about. The second thing that you want a friendly reader to do is to repeat back to you, like a parrot, almost word for word, this line really caught my attention. And then you go, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
And then you can do more of that, because you start developing a feel for that in your own self. Like just what you said, June, when you realize that, oh, that's good. That's a good line. That's a good concept. You start having that inner voice, and that actually trains your inner critic to have that friendly outside reader. So find that one person. Do not choose a spouse unless you're absolutely positive they can be that friendly reader for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So friendly reader, number 2. What's number 3?
Okay. Number 3 is when you feel ready to find a critique group or take a course or get some way that you're going to apply the seat of your pants to the seat of your chair. And there are writers guilds that are in every province and country. There's the Canadian Guild, there's the travel writer. If you're a travel writer, there's the travel writing group. You find that, and they have a newsletter list, and you put in there a little announcement that you can put in for free saying, I am writing such and such, and I'm looking for a friendly critique group. And you find that, or you take a course, and then at the course with people that you're really connected with, and you feel that synergistic, synchronistic kind of connection, you say, do you want to be in a group after this so we can keep up the motivation? Because a lot of my writing for my book has happened when I paid to take a course so that I paid to pay attention to my own dreams.
Yes. Yeah.
So pay important. To pay attention. Yeah. When you pay attention. So paying for a course will get a lot of things done because you're there, you're paying, you're investing in yourself. So that's a subtle inner message that you're valuable, your story is valuable. And it also gives you that synergistic energy to create when all these other people in the room are working along with you. And then there's also free groups. Like I have a Monday writing room where people come in for free, just say briefly what they're working on. We put our cameras and our mics off. We work for an hour and a half, almost an hour and a half. And then we come back and we say how that went. And I can't believe how much I get done in that room, knowing that there are other people in there working with me. And it's just such an awesome energy. So create that group, take a course so that you get yourself started, get some motivation, learn some extra tools and tips if you've never, written before and you want to do it because you have a story or you have this share.
Yes, I love that. We'll put the link to your Monday group below. I also have, shameless plug, on Tuesdays and Saturdays, I have a group called the Knockout, which would do the exact same thing. So if you want to come in on Tuesday or a Saturday, where you show
all
up
those days.
You set the intention and you write, and it doesn't have to be either of us, it could be someone else, but those groups are magic. Okay. So number 3, get into a group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some sort of writer's guild.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is that there are other tools. If you like, writing is a solitary act, and you're alone for a lot of the time. And so if you want to create some of that accountability for yourself, there are tools and apps to help. So there are, quote of the day type thing, because learning where your inspiration comes from and learning how to bend a quote. And I get really excited about this story, bending a quote, because when you find that one thing that makes you think twice or look twice, because Natalie Goldberg says in Writing Down the Bones, writers look at things twice. And then leading this writing group at the local cafe where my sister would come with me, I gave 3 prompts that day. I thought they were pretty good. Everybody wrote to them and everyone shared those 3 times. We're leaving, and my sister, in that sassy way that sisters can talk, is like, I didn't like any of the prompts you gave today. Oh, really? My own sass back. I said, that's really funny because everyone loved what you wrote. I loved what you wrote. I know, she says. I loved what I wrote too. Anyway, Okay, what? And she said, I realized that the prompts, writing them down on the page, just that concept or something took me into what I wanted to write anyway. And it turned out a way that I never even imagined. And that, her experience, taught me to put into words what I learned intuitively to do and how to explain to other writers to grab those moments of inspiration where they hit. And believe me, they're like dust bunnies. If you don't have time to write right at that moment, write it down in a sticky and put it in your journal, or put it in front of your computer the next time you're going to sit there and write, or put it, if you have a writer's shrine, put it there so that it will come back to you. Because I call that bending a prompt. In that, take a moment of that inspiration or whatever it was that made you think twice, look twice, read twice, and let your pen or your fingers on the keyboard, teasing those 26 gods of the keyboard into shape, let it take you where it wants to and where your inner wisdom wants to go. You will be amazed when you allow yourself to bend that moment of inspiration to where your audience out there is waiting for your story, because your story matters.
Nice. So number 4, bend a prompt, bend amazing. Great. So number 5.
Oh, okay. We were talking also about tools, about how to help yourself if you're writing alone. And you might be like, I have one client that's out on an island in Alaska, the tip, and so far away from anywhere else that she's on her own quite a bit of the time with an unstable internet connection.
Right.
And so, but one of those things is that there are some apps that really work well for you. A cold turkey app is one that I like. Write or Die is similar, and I don't suggest that one. That one makes me shiver, because Write or Die, if you're sitting there at your keyboard and you're not writing, and it gives you only so much time for not writing, that it will erase everything you wrote. No, thank you. But cold turkey is awesome. You pay once, that's it, you're done. There's a free version of it. You don't have to pay at all. But with the paid version, it gives you a whole lot more abilities to format and things and to save or whatever easily. It's awesome. And what you do is you say that I want to write at least 50 words a day. And, 50 words are so easy. That's the average length of a bio.
Right.
A short bio. And it won't let you access any of your other apps or programs or work until you write those 50 words.
Wow.
Great way to build the habit too.
Yeah.
So if writing on the keyboard is your thing. The other part too that's kind of related is like, consider your journal and your pen an app. Because when I buy a journal in a store, I feel its pages on my cheek to see if it feels more like a rose petal or sandpaper. Believe me, some paper feels like sandpaper, some paper feels like a rose petal. And your favorite pen will float across that paper. And there still will be those little mini inner vibrations, because those vibrations of the pen on the paper calm the sympathetic nervous system. So that'll take away some of the stress of writing, is if you actually still write by hand a bit.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's recap those 5 things.
Right. Did you write them down? Because they just kind of came out in no order in my mind. Okay. Well, we talked about building a writing habit. We talked about bending a prompt.
Yeah.
We talked about from simple to tech, your choice kind of thing of choosing a journl, the pen, choose your pen carefully, treat yourself to a nice pen. Okay. So that's.
We also talked about, get a kind reader.
Yes. A kind reader.
And a writing group and some sort of accountability place so you can show up and you can write.
Right. And then find your space and time to write. That's so important, because then you'll show up.
That's number 1. Yeah.
Number 1. Okay.
Rusti, I could talk with you about this all day. It's so fascinating. And it's so great, the work. I think we're really aligned. Like, we help people express themselves. What is more awesome than that? Right? Because that's how we connect. That's how we all connect with each other, by being true. So, yeah. It's
Absolutely, for
such
sure.
a joy to talk to you. So how can people find you? How can they work with you? We're going to drop that link for the Monday mornings that you do. We'll include that
Okay.
below.
All right. Yes. The rustilehay.info, and Rusty spelled with an I, not a Y. So it's a name, not a condition. And that's my website. And Linktree, I believe if you search Linktree Rusty Lehay, it should come up, because that has everything. That has some of the videos I mentioned, that has some of the links to join some of the free groups and the lists. And by all means, like, find people like June or me, because we believe in your story. And if you've lived and learned, you have wisdom to share. If you've lived and have this vivid imagination, you have some fiction and entertainment to do. And the best kind of entertainment is the stuff that actually helps us evolve to a better place, that makes us think. And so
Mhm.
use all of your stories however you want. And when you've risen above something and you've overcome things in your life, there are other people that are where you were at 20 years ago. And those are the people that are waiting for you.
Ah, so powerful. You give me shivers. This is fantastic. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this interview, if you'd like to see more interviews, hit the subscribe channel below. And if you are looking for ways to be more authentic in your marketing, whether it's writing a book or other ways, you can download my free training, my free masterclass on how to find clients when social media isn't doing it for you. Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's better ways to get that heart to heart happening. So
Oh,
Rusty, thank you for being here. And if you're watching, remember, you got this.